Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, a former chairman of one of China's top investment banks has been missing for about a month. What does his disappearance reveal about power struggles inside the Chinese regime? A rumor linking a top Chinese tech CEO to a $5 billion overseas money transfer is spreading fast online in China. Analysts say what Beijing allows to circulate could reveal more than the facts themselves.
Xi Jinping and his cronies are valuing control over everything else. They're willing to sacrifice, as I said, economic strength in exchange for the control.
China's DeepSeek reportedly delaying its release of new models due to using Huawei chips. That says OpenAI launches new AI model to get ahead of the competition. And President Trump speaking to reporters at the White House ahead of his Friday meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. The two leaders will discuss ending the Russia-Ukraine war and boosting economic ties. Before we dive into today's news, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter using the link down below. Tomorrow's edition takes a closer look at the ongoing tariff pause on Chinese imports and its ripple effects on the U.S. economy. It drops Friday morning straight to your inbox. Don't miss it. New details revealing cracks in the Chinese regime's inner circle. A former top investment banker in China has reportedly been missing for nearly a month. Ding Wei served as chairman of China International Capital Corp, one of the country's leading investment banks. He is considered a key finance aide aligned with a faction outside Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping's inner circle. Prominent Chinese newspaper Caixin first reported that Ding has been missing from public view since at least early July. Sources told the paper he was taken away about 3 weeks ago by the party's disciplinary inspection department. The department is responsible for cracking down on corruption within the Chinese Communist Party and has often been used to target opponents of the faction in power. As questions mount about Ding Wei's whereabouts, a Chinese automaker where Ding Wei served as an independent director announced 2 days ago that he had resigned from all his roles at the company. The unusual move is fueling speculation that Ding Wei may be caught up in the party's internal struggles. Ding Wei and China International Capital Corp both share close ties with two former regime leaders known to have clashed with Xi Jinping, particularly on economic issues. One of these former leaders, a former Chinese premier, is considered a strong supporter of China's open and reform policies. Zooming out, the report comes as top leaders hold their annual discreet meetings at the Beidaihe resort. The Beidaihe meeting is a traditional gathering where different Chinese Communist Party factions, along with veteran leaders, discuss disputes and try to reach compromises. Media reports suggest tensions between Xi Jinping and veteran leaders have been escalating since last year. We'll continue to monitor what Ding Wei's disappearance could mean for the balance of power within the regime. A viral rumor about Xiaomi CEO Lei Jun has been making waves on Chinese social media. It may reveal rare clues about Beijing's secretive exit bans and capital controls. Let's take a closer look.
A viral rumor on Chinese social media claims Xiaomi CEO Lei Jun secretly sent $5 billion overseas, allegedly through a Wells Fargo executive surnamed Mao. Xiaomi is China's top smartphone and electronics maker. Back in July, Shenyun Mao, a Wells Fargo executive in charge of international factoring, was reportedly banned from leaving China. Beijing said she is linked to an ongoing criminal case, but offered no further details. Xiaomi denied any connection to Mao or Wells Fargo. The company called the rumor false and announced plans for legal action. What's raising eyebrows is that a rumor targeting a high-profile tech CEO is circulating freely on China's tightly controlled internet. China analysts say companies like Xiaomi are key to Beijing's efforts to compete with the United States. Top executives like Lei Jun are usually shielded from negative press. For example, back in April, a Xiaomi electric car crashed, killing 3 college students. Reports say the doors failed to open after the crash. When CEO Lei Jun responded publicly to the accident, online comments were overwhelmingly supportive and suspiciously uniform. Some even blamed the victims' families, highlighting a sharp contrast in online reactions. So why is a rumor allowed to spread now? Analysts suggest it could be a warning to business leaders amid Xi Jinping's push for common prosperity, a campaign aimed at reducing wealth gaps in China. But critics say it's also reshaping the private sector and tightening control over the economy. Others say the rumor might be a distraction following public outrage over a school bullying case in a western Chinese province that sparked rare mass protests. It's worth noting that in China, all information is subject to strict regulation. What's allowed to be shared or restricted often offers important insights.
A rumor circulating on Chinese social media is rattling Beijing's inner circle. What does this unexpected report about Xiaomi CEO's alleged money transfer reveal about China's financial anxieties and political messaging? Joining us to discuss is retired Marine Colonel Grant Newsham, Senior Fellow at the Center for Security Policy and author of When China Attacks. Grant Newsham, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Recently, there was the Wells Fargo executive who was not allowed to leave China, even though she's an American. Now, in conjunction with that, recently there's this rumor that's being spread on Chinese social media about Xiaomi's CEO, that he allegedly, secretly transferred $5 billion overseas using someone surnamed Mao, which is the same name as the Wells Fargo executive. Now, what's interesting about this is Xiaomi is a huge Chinese company seen as important and part of the, U.S., China tech competition world. Normally, these types of companies and employees are shielded from rumors online, and given the CCP's tight control over information, especially on social media, why do you think this rumor was allowed to spread?
Well, I think the Xiaomi executive lost his protection. Every Chinese who can, the elite down to the middle class, tries to get their money out of the country, and that includes the very top people in the CCP. So moving money out of China into somewhere safe is something everybody does, and everyone knows it. But I think for some reason he got somebody really mad, and he didn't have the protection that he thought he had. But also the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party leadership, is sending a message to some very prominent companies and their executives that you had better not do anything that we don't approve of or don't like. And one wonders, say, if a message is being sent to Li Ka-shing in Hong Kong, who cut a deal with the Americans to sell a lot of overseas ports that his company, Hutchison, controls or owns. The Chinese government did not like that at all, and they've reined him in since then. But the Chinese, they say the leadership, the guys at the top of the racket, every now and then they send a message to make sure that very wealthy tycoons, prominent business people don't sort of get off the reservation, that they don't do too much without Chinese government approval. And it could be that sort of a message is being sent. As I said, what the executive is charged with is really nothing that everyone else in China isn't doing or would do if they can.
Though there's been a lot of news about China's economic state not being well, ongoing economic woes, if you will. Do you think with this rumor spreading that it's a sign that the economic state is so bad that you have to have the leadership essentially send out a message to be like, hey, keep the money inside China? Could that be one of the reasons?
Well, it is one of them, I think. You don't do something like this for no reason at all. And this has been a constant concern on the part of the Chinese leadership for decades, really. This phenomenon where, as I said, every Chinese person who can tries to get their money overseas and into the free nations where there are property rights, the US, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, etc., and ideally get a relative out with a green card. And that operates like a futures market where the people who are most successful, benefiting the most in the Chinese communist system, don't seem to have enough confidence in the future. So as I said, this is a problem that the Chinese government has had to deal with for a long time, at least several decades. And they haven't got half of the foreign exchange that they need to pay their debts overseas. And that's often not recognized, but it's a fact. So they don't like it when people are moving money overseas and changing it into foreign currency, which they don't have enough of. So they try to stop it. It is for economic reasons, as much as just the sign that the people who are benefiting most don't have enough confidence in the future of the Chinese Communist Party. So it's economic, psychological, and there's an angle of sort of a very political aspect to all of this.
I want to dig into that because this does come not long after news that Jack Ma, very famous with, the anti-IPO that was stopped, actually had to relinquish control of Ant Financial to the Chinese regime, or at least something controlled by the Chinese regime. What is this telling us about the economic but also political state of the Communist Party right now?
Well, it's that Xi Jinping and his cronies are valuing control over everything else, economic benefit, the economic condition in the country. They want control. They're willing to sacrifice, as I said, economic strength in exchange for the control. And Jack Ma's experience really shouldn't have surprised anyone. He was a creature of the Chinese Communist Party ultimately, and there wasn't enough room at Davos for both Xi Jinping and Jack Ma. So one of them had to go, and it was going to be Jack Ma. So this is a cautionary tale. But as I said, it's all about control with the Chinese Communist Party. Operate like a criminal group, and you do not share control with anyone. And that is one of the things that if you keep that in mind, a lot of what the Chinese Communist Party does make sense.
Grant Newsham, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. I always appreciate it.
China's bank loans plunged in July, marking the first drop in nearly 20 years. Official data shows a decline of almost $7 billion. Fewer loans mean people and businesses are borrowing less, another sign of weak demand and a slowing economy in China. China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, published the loan figures on Wednesday without explaining the decline. The drop in loans comes as Chinese consumers and businesses rush to repay banks. This happens despite efforts by Chinese leaders to boost domestic demand with new stimulus measures. According to Reuters estimates, households were the weakest borrowers in July. This points to an ongoing real estate crisis in China. Beijing's tariff standoff with Washington is also making business owners more cautious. The White House is gearing up for the meeting between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. President Putin's foreign policy advisor says the two leaders will start with a one-on-one session, followed by talks with their full delegations. The Kremlin added that the two leaders will hold a joint press conference afterwards. It said the talks will be businesslike and will cover not only the war, but also what it calls the huge untapped potential for U.S.-Russia economic relations. Earlier on Thursday, President Trump spoke on the matter at the Oval Office. Take a look.
We have a meeting with President Putin tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelenskyy, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens. And I think President Putin will make peace. I think President Zelenskyy will make peace. We'll see if they can get along. And if they can, it'll be great.
President Trump was asked what kind of negotiations he'd bring to the table with Russian President Putin. Here's his response when it came to potentially giving Russia access to rare earths that Ukraine is using to repay the U.S. for weapons and supplies.
We have great rare earth. We made that as payment for all of the money that we've spent so foolishly in Ukraine. We spent $350 billion. Now Europe spent $1 billion. That's a lot of money. They spent $100 billion. That's a lot of money, but we shouldn't be spending a lot more money than them, and they understand that. And I think that's maybe why we're not spending money anymore. We're not spending any money. They're paying us for everything. So people are shocked when they hear it. They don't even understand. They don't even write about it. But we're not spending money, but we are spending a lot of time trying to get the war solved. If we can get the war solved, we'll be very happy. As far as rare earth, that's very unimportant relative. I'm trying to save lives.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin says the meeting will begin at 11:30 Friday morning Alaska time. That's 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern. The summit marks the first face-to-face meeting between the two leaders since Trump returned to office in January. Souvenirs featuring U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are drawing attention in Moscow ahead of their meeting. T-shirts and nesting dolls depicting Putin and Trump side by side are among the most popular souvenirs. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also weighed in on Friday's summit. Rubio said this morning that preparations were going very fast as the meeting was put together very quickly. Rubio also expressed that the U.S. delegation is optimistic. Take a listen.
Well, to achieve a peace, I think we all recognize that there'll have to be some conversation about security guarantees. There'll have to be some conversation about, territorial disputes and claims and what they're fighting over. All these things will be part of a comprehensive thing. But I think the president's hope is to achieve some stoppage of fighting so that those conversations can happen. These are tiny technical things that take some time to work out. But we'll see what's possible tomorrow. Let's see how the talks go. We're hopeful. We want there to be a peace. We're going to do everything we can to achieve one. But ultimately, it'll be up to Ukraine and Russia to agree to one.
Ukraine's President Zelenskyy met with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Thursday. During their bilateral meeting, the two leaders discussed expectations for the upcoming Alaska summit, security guarantees for any potential peace agreement, and investment in Ukraine's drone production. Zelenskyy visited London to shore up European support, aiming to prevent any agreement that would force Ukraine to give up territory. He said Kyiv secured a $1.5 billion from European allies, which will be used to purchase U.S. weapons for Ukraine's defense. The Netherlands contributed $500 million, while Denmark, Norway, and Sweden together pledged another $500 million. Germany added an additional $500 million. In an next post following his meeting with UK Prime Minister Zelenskyy said they talked about what to expect at the Alaska summit and how to secure lasting peace. He also highlighted Ukraine's need to expand drone production, saying drones play a decisive role on the front line and that the country urgently needs investment to boost output. Coming up, China's DeepSeek reportedly delaying its release of new models due to using Huawei chips, and that says OpenAI launches a new AI model to get ahead of the competition. And U.S. Customs officials have seized a massive shipment of counterfeit name-brand jewelry worth more than $30 million, if authentic. Authorities say this bust is part of a broader crackdown on fake goods. That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A Financial Times report says China's AI firm DeepSeek is delaying the launch of its new model after failing to train it on Huawei chips. The hiccup highlights Beijing's dependence on U.S. technology and the challenges in its push for tech self-sufficiency.
The outlet reported that Chinese authorities urged DeepSeek to use Huawei's Ascend processor rather than NVIDIA's products. NVIDIA is a leading U.S. company making chips that power AI chatbots. DeepSeek reportedly used Huawei chips first, but ran into constant tech issues. It had to switch to NVIDIA chips instead. President Trump struck a deal with NVIDIA. Under it, the company has to share 15% of its H20 chip sales to China with the U.S. government. Chinese state media discouraged companies from using NVIDIA chips following the deal. Microchips are at the heart of U.S.-China competition as they power our modern life, from cars to laptops to military weapons. The U.S. government has been trying to limit Beijing's access to advanced U.S. microchips over concerns that it could enhance military capability. Trump said NVIDIA's H20 chips are an old chip that China already has. NVIDIA has made H20 less powerful than its top-performing chips to adhere to export control restrictions.
Last week, OpenAI released its first artificial intelligence model since releasing ChatGPT. It comes as the company tries to get ahead of the curve amid rising competition from China's DeepSeek. The release comes half a year after DeepSeek launched an AI model similar to ChatGPT. The news sent shockwaves in the market and raised concerns that China is narrowing the gap in its AI race with the U.S. A shipment busted in Louisville could have been worth over $30 million if it were real. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol officers intercepted more than 7,000 pairs of counterfeit earrings in a package from Hong Kong. It was labeled as a metal necklace resembling the iconic Van Cleef & Arpels Alhambra, a federally protected trademark. For the past 3 years, jewelry, watches, and handbags have topped the list of counterfeit goods seized by value. And nearly all of it, about 90%, comes from China and Hong Kong last year. China is also the top offender in copying luxury brands. Many of these knockoffs end up on the black market or third-party e-commerce sites, funding criminal organizations. In recent months, CBP has confiscated millions of counterfeit items from China, securing the integrity of U.S. markets. Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping spoke with Brazil's President Lula da Silva earlier this week, urging unity to push back against the U.S. When asked about Xi's unity call with Lula, here's President Trump's response.
No, not at all. I'm not concerned at all. They can do what they want. None of them are doing very well. And what we're doing in terms of economics, we're blowing everyone away, including China. We're doing better than any other country in the world right now.
Florida is preparing to open a second immigration detention facility. Governor Ron DeSantis announced the idea to open a second facility Thursday morning.
Here in North Florida, we are calling this the Deportation Depot. It is going to be located here at Baker Correctional Institute. And again, the reason of this is not to just house people indefinitely. We want to process, stage, and then return illegal aliens to their home country.
The so-called Deportation Depot will be located about 40 miles west of Jacksonville. It is expected to hold 1,300 immigration detention beds, but state officials say the capacity could be expanded to 2,000 beds. DeSantis says the Trump administration needs the additional capacity to hold and deport more immigrants. That's why Florida is setting up a second detention center after recently opening Alligator Alcatraz. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.